Have you ever wondered how long it took for God's promises to be fulfilled? Every great event in the Bible required time. What seemed like an endless wait resulted in something extraordinary. Today, we have 20 questions that will make us reflect on God's timing, a timing that may seem long to us, but is always perfect. Are you ready to discover how long faith had to wait? Let us know in the comments how many answers you got right. Let's get started with the quiz. Question 1. How many years did Noah wait from the command to build the ark until the flood began? A. 150 years. B. 120 years. C. 100 years. D. 80 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 120 years. God commanded Noah to build the ark, and he worked diligently for 120 years. Despite the difficulties and disbelief around him, Noah trusted in God's promise. When the flood began, the ark was ready, symbolizing Noah's faithfulness and God's perfect timing. Genesis 6 verse 3, Genesis 7 verses 11 to 12. Question 2. How many years did Abraham wait for the promise of having a child with Sarah to be fulfilled? A. 10 years. B. 25 years. C. 15 years. D. 20 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 25 years. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, even when this seemed impossible for him and Sarah. They waited 25 years until the miracle of Isaac was realized, showing that God's promises never fail, even when time seems long. Genesis 12 verse 4, Genesis 21 verse 5. Question 3. How long did Moses wait in the desert before God called him to free Israel? A. 10 years. B. 20 years. C. 40 years. D. 50 years. Time. Correct answer, C. 40 years. After fleeing Egypt, Moses lived as a shepherd in the desert of Midian for 40 years. This waiting period was necessary for God to prepare him for the mission of freeing the Israelites from slavery, showing that waiting is part of God's divine plan. Exodus 3 verses 1 to 12. Question 4. How many years did Joseph wait from the promise of ruling until he became governor of Egypt? A. 20 years. B. 15 years. C. 13 years. D. 10 years. Time. Correct answer, C. 13 years. Joseph had prophetic dreams at 17 that indicated his future as a leader. He faced many challenges, being sold into slavery and imprisoned, but after 13 years, at the age of 30, he became governor of Egypt, showing that God fulfills his promises at the right time. Genesis 37 verse 2, Genesis 41 verse 46. Question 5. How many years did Jacob wait to return to his father's land after fleeing to Haran? A. 10 years. B. 20 years. C. 15 years. D. 25 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 20 years. Jacob fled to Haran after deceiving his brother Esau, and there he lived for 20 years serving Laban. After this time, God called him back to his father's land, fulfilling the promise to protect Jacob during his journey. Genesis 31 verses 38 to 41, Genesis 32 verse 9. Question 6. How long did David wait from being anointed by Samuel until becoming king of Israel? A. 5 years. B. 15 years. C. 10 years. D. 20 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 15 years. David was anointed king while still young, but faced many trials and persecutions before finally taking the throne of Israel. For 15 years, he waited patiently, demonstrating his trust in God to fulfill his promises at the proper time. 1 Samuel 16 verses 11 to 13, 2 Samuel 5 verse 4. Question 7. How many years did the Israelites wait between the promise made to Abraham and their liberation from Egypt? A. 300 years. B. 400 years. C. 500 years. D. 600 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 400 years. God told Abraham that his descendants would be enslaved in a foreign land for 400 years, but that he would deliver them. After centuries of oppression, God sent Moses to lead them out of Egypt, showing that divine plans are fulfilled, even with long waits. Genesis 15 verse 13, Exodus 12 verse 40. Question 8. How many years did Hannah wait in prayer before having her son Samuel? A. 10 years. B. 5 years. C. 7 years. D. 15 years. Time. Correct answer, A. 10 years. Hannah prayed and pleaded with God for many years before receiving the blessing of a child. After about 10 years of waiting, she gave birth to Samuel, and her story shows that God hears his children's cries and answers at the right time. 1 Samuel 1 verses 10 to 20. Question 9. How long did Isaac wait for his wife Rebekah to have children? A. 10 years. B. 20 years. C. 15 years. D. 5 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 20 years. Isaac and Rebekah waited 20 years for the birth of their children, Jacob and Esau. During this time, Isaac continuously prayed to God, demonstrating faith and patience until the promise of descendants was fulfilled. Genesis 25 verses 20 to 26. Question 10. How many years did Jacob have to work in total to marry Rachel? A. 10 years. B. 7 years. C. 14 years. D. 5 years. Time. Correct answer, C. 14 years. Jacob loved Rachel deeply and worked for 7 years to marry her. After being deceived by Laban, he worked another 7 years, totaling 14 years of waiting. His story illustrates the value of patience and perseverance in the face of adversity. Genesis 29 verses 18 to 30. Question 11. How many years did Ezekiel prophesy before the fall of Jerusalem? A. 10 years. B. 20 years. C. 30 years. D. 5 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 20 years. The prophet Ezekiel began his ministry in captivity and prophesied for about 20 years before the fall of Jerusalem. His warnings and messages of hope revealed God's plan for the judgment and restoration of Israel. Ezekiel 1 verses 1 to 3, Ezekiel 24 verses 1 to 2. Question 12. How many years did the woman with the bleeding issue wait before being healed by Jesus? A. 12 years. B. 15 years. C. 20 years. D. 25 years. Time. Correct answer, A. 12 years. The woman with the bleeding issue suffered for 12 years before touching Jesus' garments and being healed. Her long wait and faith in Jesus' healing show how God rewards perseverance and trust in His promises. Mark 5 verses 25 to 34. Question 13. How old was Caleb when he finally received his inheritance in the Promised Land? A. 40 years. B. 85 years. C. 60 years. D. 75 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 85 years. Caleb was 40 years old when he was one of the spies sent to the land of Canaan. After 45 years of waiting and wandering in the desert, at 85 years old, he received the Promised Land, demonstrating his perseverance and trust in God's promises. Joshua 14 verses 6 to 13. Question 14. How many years did Solomon wait to succeed David on the throne of Israel? A. 40 years. B. 20 years. C. 25 years. D. 30 years. Time. Correct answer, A. 40 years. Solomon became king of Israel after the death of his father, David, who reigned for 40 years. David's long reign laid a solid foundation for Solomon to inherit the throne and build the temple in Jerusalem, fulfilling God's promise. 1 Kings 2 verses 10 to 12, 1 Kings 11 verse 42. Question 15. How long did Joseph wait to reunite with his father Jacob in Egypt? A. 22 years. B. 15 years. C. 10 years. D. 12 years. Time. Correct answer, A. 22 years. Joseph was sold into slavery at 17 and reunited with his father Jacob 22 years later when his family moved to Egypt during the famine. This reunion fulfilled God's plan to save Israel. Genesis 37 verse 2, Genesis 45 verses 4 to 6. Question 16. How long did God wait to fulfill the promise of sending the Messiah after Isaiah's prophecy? A. 600 years. B. 700 years. C. 500 years. D. 400 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 700 years. Isaiah prophesied about the coming of the Messiah approximately 700 years before Jesus was born. This promise was fulfilled in God's perfect timing, showing that even after centuries of waiting, His words never fail. Isaiah 7 verse 14, Matthew 1 verses 22 to 23. Question 17. How many years did Samuel wait until God called him to be a prophet? A. 15 years. B. 7 years. C. 12 years. D. 10 years. Time. Correct answer, C. 12 years. Samuel was dedicated to God's service from childhood, and at 12 years old, he heard the Lord's voice for the first time, marking the beginning of his prophetic ministry. His story illustrates the importance of listening to and obeying God's call, even during the wait. 1 Samuel 3 verses 1 to 10. Question 18. How many years did God wait before fulfilling the promise of delivering the Israelites from Babylonian captivity? A. 50 years. B. 70 years. C. 60 years. D. 40 years. Time. Correct answer, B. 70 years. God allowed the Israelites to remain in Babylonian captivity for 70 years before fulfilling the promise of deliverance. This period was a time of discipline and reflection, but also of hope, for God did not forget His people. Jeremiah 25 verses 11 to 12, Ezra 1 verse 1. Question 19. How long did the Israelites wait for Solomon to complete the construction of the temple? A. 7 years. B. 15 years. C. 10 years. D. 20 years. Time. Correct answer, A. 7 years. Solomon took 7 years to build the temple in Jerusalem, fulfilling his father David's wish and God's promise. This temple would become the center of worship in Israel, marking a significant moment in the history of God's people. 1 Kings 6 verses 37 to 38. Question 20. How long did Esther wait to become queen after the selection process began? A. 1 year. B. 2 years. C. 6 months. D. 3 years. Time. Correct answer, A. 1 year. Esther underwent a year of preparation before being presented to King Xerxes. Her patience during this time was rewarded when she was chosen as queen, playing a crucial role in God's plan to save the Jewish people. Esther 2 verses 12 to 17. You understand? Even though the wait may seem long to us, God's promises are always fulfilled at the right time. He is perfect and knows the exact moment to act. Now, we want to know, how many questions did you get right in this quiz? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with your friends and family. By doing so, you help us spread the word of God to more people. Thank you for watching. Check out more videos here, and may God bless you abundantly. Until the next quiz.